Have you ever thought about how a simple cup of coffee could change someone's life? Well, it changed mine. Not by drinking it, by writing on it. It all started after the most embarrassing day of my life. My name is Liz, and 6 months ago I was standing at an airport in Canada, my hands shaking as my dreams crumbled in front of me. All because of one thing. I couldn't speak English when it mattered most. His words were fast, and my mind went blank. All those years of studying English in books didn't help me when I needed to speak in real life. "I'm sorry, but your student visa application has some problems," he said slowly, probably seeing the confusion on my face. "You need to go back." That day, I returned home feeling like a failure. My dream of studying abroad turned into a nightmare because I couldn't communicate properly in English. My parents spent so much money on this opportunity, and I let them down. For 2 weeks, I stayed in my room, feeling sorry for myself. Then one morning, I saw a small coffee shop near my house with a help wanted sign. The shop was called Morning Whispers, and something about the name made me smile. What do I have to lose? I thought to myself. I walked in, and the smell of fresh coffee made me feel better instantly. The manager, Kate, was very kind. She had gray hair and warm eyes that reminded me of my grandmother. "Do you have any experience?" she asked. "No," I answered honestly, "but I learn quickly, and I really need this job." Kate looked at me for a moment, then smiled. "Everyone starts somewhere," she said. "When can you begin?" That was the beginning of my new life. Learning to make coffee was hard at first, but I enjoyed it. Every morning, I practiced making different types of coffee: espresso, latte, cappuccino. Each cup had to be perfect. One day, while making a latte for a regular customer, I had an idea. I remembered how it felt at the airport, not being able to speak English properly. Many people probably felt the same way. I took out my marker and wrote on the coffee cup, "Hello, have a wonderful day." Then underneath, I wrote the translation. The customer, a busy businessman, looked at the cup and smiled. It was a small thing, but it made me happy. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn my failure into something good. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was full of ideas. What if I could help others learn English while serving coffee? What if Morning Whispers could become more than just a coffee shop? Little did I know, this was just the beginning of something amazing. The next morning, I arrived early at Morning Whispers. My heart was beating fast with excitement about my new idea. While preparing the coffee shop for opening, I wrote 20 simple English phrases on small cards. "Good morning, Kate," I said to my manager. "Can I try something new with our customers?" Kate looked at my cards and smiled. "Sometimes the best ideas come from unexpected places," she said. "Show me what you want to do." Our first customer that morning was Mr. Thompson, an elderly man who always ordered the same thing, a large black coffee, no sugar. But today was different. "Your coffee, Mr. Thompson," I said, handing him the cup. On it, I had written, "Every morning is a fresh start," with the translation below. He looked at the cup for a long moment. "My grandson lives in London," he said suddenly. "He sends me messages in English, but ... His voice became quiet. "I can't understand them." My heart skipped a beat. "Would you like to learn some basic English phrases, Mr. Thompson?" I could write a new one on your cup every day." His eyes lit up. "You would do that?" That was the moment everything started to change. By lunchtime, other customers noticed the English phrases on their cups. A young student asked if she could take a photo of her cup to study the phrase later. Then something amazing happened. A woman reading her cup said the phrase out loud, practicing the pronunciation. Soon, another customer joined in. The coffee shop filled with voices practicing English together. "Liz," Kate called me at the end of my shift. "Come here for a moment." I worried that maybe I had gone too far with my idea, but Kate was smiling. "Look at this," she said, showing me her phone. Our customers had been sharing photos of their coffee cups on social media. Morning Whispers is becoming famous for something special. I couldn't believe it. My small idea was growing into something bigger than I imagined. But I had no idea what would happen next, or how one simple cup of coffee would lead to an even bigger change in all our lives. Have you ever watched a small snowball grow into something huge? That's exactly what happened at Morning Whispers. What started with simple phrases on coffee cups was about to become much more. One rainy afternoon, Mr. Thompson came in looking happier than ever. He was holding his phone, his hands shaking with excitement. "Liz, Liz," he called out, "look at this." My grandson sent me a message, and I understood it. He was so surprised when I replied in English. I smiled, remembering my own struggle at the airport. But this time, the story had a different ending. "That's wonderful, Mr. Thompson. What did you write to him?" I used the phrase from yesterday's cup, "Missing you, hoping to see you soon. He's coming to visit next month." Other customers in the coffee shop heard our conversation. A young woman named Maya, who always sat in the corner with her laptop, approached us. "I have an idea," she said. "I'm an English teacher. What if we started a small conversation group here? Just for basic English practice?" Kate, who was listening nearby, didn't hesitate. "We could do it after closing time. Use the space for something meaningful." That's how our coffee and conversation evenings began. Every Tuesday and Thursday, after 7 p.m., we pushed the tables together and practiced English. Maya volunteered to guide the sessions, and I provided coffee and treats. The first meeting, only 5 people came. Mr. Thompson was there, of course. But the next week, 10 people showed up. Then 15. Something beautiful was happening. People weren't just learning English, they were sharing their stories. A mother wanting to help her children with homework. A college student preparing for study abroad. A businessman tired of feeling nervous during international calls. One evening, while cleaning up after a session, Maya pulled me aside. "You know what's special about this place, Liz? It's not just about learning English. It's about feeling safe to try, to make mistakes, to start over." I looked around the coffee shop at the walls now covered with English phrases contributed by our customers, at the small community we had built. "I never thought my biggest failure would lead to this," I said. Maya smiled. "Sometimes the best dreams are the ones we never planned, but life has a funny way of surprising us." None of us knew that the biggest challenge and the most amazing opportunity was just around the corner. It was just another busy morning at Morning Whispers when everything changed. I was writing the day's English phrase on cups. "Your dreams are waiting for you." The door opened and a well-dressed woman walked in. She wasn't our usual customer. Everything about her looked expensive and important. She ordered a cappuccino but didn't leave after getting it. Instead, she sat watching everything: the customers practicing English phrases, the wall of shared words, the warm atmosphere. Finally, she approached the counter. "Who started this English learning initiative?" she asked. My hands were shaking as I raised them slightly. "I did. Is something wrong?" She smiled, reaching into her designer bag. "Wrong? Quite the opposite. I'm Sarah Chun from the International Education Center. We've been hearing about this place on social media." She handed me her business card. My heart was beating so fast I could barely read it. "We're looking for innovative ways to help people learn English," she continued. "And what you've created here, it's exactly what we need." Mr. Thompson, who was sitting nearby, joined the conversation. "Liz helped me connect with my grandson in London," he said proudly. "Now we talk every week." Other customers started sharing their stories too. Maya, our volunteer teacher, explained about our evening sessions. Mrs. Chen listened to everything, taking notes on her phone. "Here's my proposal," she finally said. "We want to help you expand this project. Training, resources, maybe even a small grant to create a proper learning space." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm not a real teacher. I even failed at my own dream of studying abroad. "Sometimes teaching isn't about being perfect," she replied. "It's about understanding the struggle and helping others through it. You've created something special here, a place where people feel safe to learn." Kate, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "The storage room upstairs. We could turn it into a classroom." Mrs. Chun nodded. "We could help with that." But she looked at me seriously. "There's one condition." "What's that?" I asked nervously. "You need to complete our teaching certification program." "Are you ready to become a real teacher, Liz?" The whole coffee shop went quiet. Everyone was looking at me. 6 months ago, I was crying at an airport because I couldn't speak English properly. Now I was being offered a chance to help others avoid that same pain. But could I really do it? Was I ready to turn my small idea into something bigger? Do you know that moment when your whole life can change with just one word? I was standing there, looking at Mrs. Chun, feeling everyone's eyes on me. Then I heard a voice. "Remember the airport, Liz?" It was Maya. She was right. I thought about that terrible day, about all the people who might be feeling the same way right now. I took a deep breath. "Yes," I said. "I'll do it." The coffee shop erupted in cheers. Mr. Thompson hugged me, and Kate was wiping tears from her eyes. Mrs. Chun looked pleased. "Perfect. The program starts next week." But first, she looked around the coffee shop. "Let's talk about transforming that storage room." The next few weeks were like a beautiful chaos. During the day, I made coffee and wrote English phrases on cups. In the evenings, I studied for my teaching certification. Our regular customers became my practice students, helping me learn as I helped them. The storage room transformation was amazing. Our little community came together to help. Mr. Thompson's grandson, who was visiting from London, helped us set up a video chat system for international connections. Maya shared all her teaching materials. But the most touching moment came when our customers surprised us. They had collected money to buy books and learning materials. "You changed our lives," they said. "Now it's our turn to help." One evening, while practicing for my teaching exam, I found my old passport with the rejected visa. Looking at it didn't hurt anymore. Instead, it reminded me of how far I'd come. Kate found me staring at it. "You know what's beautiful about your story, Liz?" she said. "You didn't just learn from your failure, you turned it into something that helps others." "But what if I fail again?" I asked. "What if I'm not good enough to be a real teacher?" She smiled and pointed to the wall where we kept our customers' success stories. "Look at all the people you've already helped. You did that without any certificate. Just imagine what you'll do with proper training." Suddenly my phone buzzed. It was an email from Mrs. Chen. The subject line made my heart stop. "Urgent. International Education. Conference. Guest speaker needed." Have you ever felt like your biggest fear suddenly became your biggest opportunity? That's exactly what Mrs. Chen's email was about. "Dear Liz, the International Education Conference needs a speaker to discuss innovative English teaching methods. Your coffee shop story is exactly what we're looking for. The conference is in Toronto, Canada, the same city where your journey began. Are you ready to go back? Best regards, Sarah Chen." My hands were shaking. Canada, the place where I'd failed 6 months ago. But this time, I wouldn't be going as a scared student. I'd be going as a speaker. "You have to do it," Maya said when I showed her the email. "Your story could inspire so many people." The next few weeks were intense. During the day, I worked in the newly transformed learning center above the coffee shop. At night, I practiced my presentation with our evening group. Mr. Thompson helped me the most. "Speak from your heart," he said. "Tell them how it feels to be afraid of speaking English. Tell them how it feels to finally connect with someone in another language." The day before my flight, our coffee shop community organized a surprise practice session. They decorated the space with Canadian flags and made me give my full presentation. Even some local newspaper reporters came to cover the story. Local coffee shop revolution, from simple phrases to international recognition. That night, Kate gave me something special, a coffee cup with a message she had written herself. Sometimes our biggest failures lead us to our greatest purpose. At the airport the next morning, everything felt different. Same building, same signs, but I was different. My English wasn't perfect, but I knew that wasn't what mattered most. As I waited to board my flight, I received photos from the coffee shop. They had started a countdown to my presentation. The walls were covered with encouraging messages in both English and our native language. Then I noticed something that made me cry. Mr. Thompson had sent me a screenshot of his chat with his grandson. My friend Liz, the one who helped me learn English, is going to speak at a big conference in Canada. She's nervous, but I told her what she always tells us. Your dreams are waiting for you. The flight attendant called my row number. It was time. As I walked toward the plane, I touched the coffee cup in my bag, the one Kate had given me. This time I was ready. But what I didn't know was that the biggest surprise was still waiting for me in Toronto. The moment I stepped into Toronto International Airport, memories of my last visit flooded back. But this time, something incredible happened. "Next, please," called a familiar voice. I looked up and froze. It was him, the same immigration officer from 6 months ago. He probably wouldn't remember me, but I remembered him. Purpose of visit? He asked, looking at my passport. I'm speaking at the International Education Conference, I said clearly, my voice steady this time. He looked at me more closely, then his eyes widened with recognition. Wait, I remember you. You were here 6 months ago, had trouble with the language. I nodded, expecting embarrassment, but instead he smiled. You're English. It's so much better now. What happened? Before I could answer, Mrs. Chun appeared beside me. She happened, she said proudly. Liz created one of our most successful English learning programs. That's why she's here, to share her story. The officer's face lit up. Would you mind if I came to hear your presentation? My daughter, she's struggling with the same issues you had. Maybe your story could help her. That afternoon, in my hotel room, I received messages from home. The coffee shop team had set up a live stream to watch my presentation tomorrow. Mr. Thompson sent a photo of everyone gathered around a laptop during our usual English practice session, holding cups with encouraging messages. The next morning, I walked onto the stage of the conference center. The room was packed. In the front row, I saw Mrs. Chun, and there he was, the immigration officer with a teenage girl who must be his daughter. I took a deep breath and began. 6 months ago, I stood in this city, unable to speak English when it mattered most. Today, I want to tell you about how a cup of coffee changed everything. As I spoke, I saw people nodding, some wiping tears. The immigration officer's daughter was taking notes. Through the live stream camera, I could see my coffee shop family watching, proud smiles on their faces. After the presentation, the immigration officer's daughter came to me. Your story, she said in hesitant English. It gives me hope. Can I ask you something? Of course, I replied. When you write English phrases on coffee cups, what's your favorite one? I smiled, remembering all the cups, all the phrases, all the lives touched. Actually, I said, I just thought of a new one. Sometimes the best dreams find us when we're brave enough to try again. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Kate. They had already written my new phrase on all of tomorrow's cups back home. But the biggest surprise came when Mrs. Chun announced the conference's final decision. Have you ever noticed how endings often feel like new beginnings? That's exactly what happened that evening in Toronto. Mrs. Chen stood on the stage, holding the microphone with a bright smile. Ladies and gentlemen, the International Education Center has made a decision. We're going to fund coffee shop English programs in 10 different cities. The room erupted in applause, but she wasn't finished. And who better to lead this initiative than the person who started it all? Liz, we want you to be the program director. You'll train others to create spaces just like Morning Whispers. My heart stopped. Me? Training others? But then I looked at my phone. My coffee shop family was still watching through the live stream, all cheering. The immigration officer's daughter ran up to me. Will one of the new programs be here in Toronto? She asked hopefully. Actually, Mrs. Chun answered, Toronto will be our first new location. That's when the immigration officer spoke up. I know the perfect place, he said. My sister owns a coffee shop downtown. She's been looking for a way to make it special. 2 months later, I stood in Morning Whispers, looking at our wall of success stories. It was my last day before leaving to help set up the Toronto location. But this wasn't goodbye. It was an expansion of our family. Kate had promoted Maya to manage our original learning center. Mr. Thompson was now our senior conversation partner, helping newcomers feel comfortable. His grandson had even started an online version of our program from London. "Ready for your last cup of coffee here?" Kate asked, handing me a special cup. On it, she had written all the phrases that marked our journey. "Every morning is a fresh start. Your dreams are waiting for you. Sometimes our biggest failures lead us to our greatest purpose, and at the bottom, a new one. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of forever." That evening, during our final English session, everyone shared their stories. The mother who could now help her children with homework. The businessman who just got promoted for his improved English skills. Mr. Thompson, who was planning to visit his grandson in London. "You know what's amazing?" Maya said. "All of this happened because you weren't afraid to try again, Liz." I looked around at all the faces I had grown to love. "No," I replied. "All of this happened because everyone here believed that a simple cup of coffee could be more than just a drink. It could be a beginning." The next morning, as I boarded my flight to Toronto, my phone buzzed with messages from our coffee shop family. They had already decorated the wall with a new phrase, "Distance doesn't matter when you're family." See you on video chat next Tuesday. And so my coffee shop dream grew bigger than I ever imagined. Because sometimes the best dreams aren't the ones we plan. They're the ones we discover when we're brave enough to start over. But this isn't just my story anymore. It's the story of every person who ever felt lost in a new language, of every dream that seemed too big, and of every cup of coffee that carried a message of hope. After all, isn't that what dreams are made of? Not just the big moments, but the small ones too, like writing English phrases on coffee cups, one word at a time. Subscribe, like, and comment if this story helped you with English.